What happens when confidence isn't enough, and how women can reclaim their power when they're interrupted in male dominated spaces.
Showing it feels taking over. No one can deny we're queens in our own rights. Got our fleet, we're ruling the game. Turning heads, yeah, we're making our own name. Living free, we're breaking the mold. Unapologetic, we're standing bold. Every picture we post, it's a story untold. We're inspiring souls, watch us unfold. Watch us unfold.
Hey, ladies, hey, welcome to Rooted in Your Confidence, a podcast where we have real conversations that are unfiltered about what it means to stand tall, speak up, and stay grounded in who you are, especially in male dominated industries where no one looks like you, or you feel no one is listening to you or knows how to lead the same way you do. My name is Samantha Kaye Harris, and I am the Brag Bag Strategist. So, ladies, let's get into it today. This is a personal podcast for me because it happened during my workshop when I asked the question of the audience, why don't you speak up? Where is your confidence? And one of the women who was attending my workshop said to me, I am confident. I speak up and I know my stuff. Then, as we kept going throughout the workshop, she said something that struck me because I asked her what made her attend the Stop the Mansplaining workshop. Because she's confident and she knows her stuff, which I believe because of the way she said it. She said it with conviction, like many of us do, because we have our brag bag in place. We've done the work. But then the shift came when she said to me, it's not that I'm not confident, it's that they interrupt me. Confidence isn't always enough. Let me first tell you that. Even when you bring your brag, and she had hers, she was walking with it, but the moment they didn't let her go, and it rattled her. That moment that they stopped her from going into her bag when she had it ready and she could recite, yes, I've been doing this 50 years. I've studied. I have made X, Y, and Z. At that moment, when they didn't let her finish her conversation, it rattled her. Confidence gets you in the room, ladies, but keeping your voice, that's self-trust. That's courage. When you learn to stand in your truth, that means you understand your beliefs. She didn't ask herself why I didn't speak up when they cut me off. She had the knowledge, the clarity, but she lost her personal grounding. She lost her footing because she wasn't sure why she did not stand up, why she did not speak up. I remember being there. I remember being in a place where I didn't speak up when I was interrupted many a day, because someone always felt they knew better. They could speak up more assertively. They had, because they were men and this was considered a male-dominated industry, they were considered the experts. So I remember a day, just like it was yesterday, and I was, as always, talking to my chief, and we were talking about the numbers of incoming employees. Because during a certain season in the year, we increase the amount of employees we have to make sure that we are equipped to handle any conditions that may arise. And so I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember being in places where I had the conversation, where I had spoken up, or when people would come into my office, and let's call him Mitch. And Mitch had a tendency to come into my office often. And when he came into my office, he always wanted to sit down and have these really in-depth conversations with me. And me not thinking anything of it, I would just have the conversation with him. I was more seasoned. I had over 20 years. I knew my union books. I knew the staff's responsibilities. I knew what we needed season to season. This is what I did. This is what I knew, and that's what's in my brag bag. I had the certifications. And he knew this also. So I would rattle off things to him. And it was no biggie to me because educating and I'm not a gatekeeper. So I don't mind sharing my knowledge. But it's funny when we would be in meetings and a question would be posed to me, Mitch would cut me off and say it as if it was his idea, as if it was his thought, his knowledge. And it wasn't, it was mine. And I would be in utter shock. Honey, I was holding my pearls, my invisible pearls. I was like, oh my goodness, because I didn't speak up. I didn't say anything. I just allowed it to happen to me. And it wasn't that I wasn't confident in what I knew or how I was doing it. It was the shock and then not wanting to be labeled as or not wanting to be thought of as disrespectful. I know that being raised in a family where men led and their voice was important, that was an understanding that not to be rude, not to be disrespectful, let them speak. You can always come back later. So it taught me to not stand up. It taught me not to use my voice and defend myself. But I had to learn to understand that it wasn't the fact that I was afraid of speaking up. It wasn't the fact that I didn't know what I knew. It wasn't the fact that I wasn't intelligent enough. It was that underlying belief and not understanding it, that it came and it was embedded, ingrained in me to have a certain type of respect, decorum, and holding myself that way because I didn't want to be labeled. Fast forward after learning, understanding myself, that means I did the work. To stand in my truth, I had to understand me. And in understanding me, that means I understood that a lot of the thoughts that I had came from belief systems that I agreed to before I was even born, before I was even able to take two steps, because it was societal norms, it was societal conditions, and it was really because of my family. It was generational. Sit between the patriarchal system, society, and generational norms and conditioning. I had been programmed to show up a certain way. And once I started writing and digging deeper and understanding the why and not just doing it or not just being angry, that's when things shifted for me. That's when there was a change. And when I think back on it, it really gets me a little emotional because I think about how long it took me to figure that out because I wasn't asking the right questions of myself, what I was allowing because I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's okay. And I give myself grace for that. But I remember when I did, when things shifted and changed, and as I got to understand me and ask myself, am I doing this for them or am I doing it for me? And understanding why I was or was not speaking when interrupted. It was a game changer for me. I was having a day when I was speaking to my assistant, who I report directly to, my assistant chief, and him and I was talking about preparing for the season that was coming in, the new employees that were being hired and brought in, how many staff we need, what training they would need, because this is part of my responsibilities. And again, let's call this guy Harry. Let's call him Harry. Not even going to give him the whole thing. And he came in like always. Like I said, they love to talk to me. And I'm not a gatekeeper, so I talk. And Harry came in and he's listening to myself and the assistant talk. And he wanted to interrupt and interject. So now I'm not angry. I'm not mad. But I did pause the conversation. Yes, I did. I said, hey, what you doing? Because it's how I talk. So, hey, what you doing? And he was taken aback because now I'm stopping him. Because I'm like, hey, I was saying that. I then repeated what I was saying and I directed it to the assistant chief. Like, hey, I was saying this and thank you for reiterating what I said, but I believe it was clear. Now I'm redirecting. I'm bringing it back too. And I'm acknowledging that he interrupted me and I stopped him without anger, without any type of yelling or screaming, because I understood at that moment that I was going to speak up because I deserved to not only be in the room, but because it was rude for him to interrupt me. And I had the right to redirect it, because not speaking up was something in the past for me. It was no longer where I was standing and what I felt and thought in my mind. I believed in me. I believed in what I was doing. And I understood that it came from the norms that kept me from showing up before. So now I was good with that. I done did the work. I understand that core belief that I had was keeping me from showing up and speaking up, even though I was confident in what I was doing and everyone else knew that I was. But they wanted to take it and spin it the way they thought would give them credibility. But I said no more, because understanding why I wasn't allowed me now to show up as I am. I'm going to leave that right there. I'm not going to say nothing more about that. I showed up as I am, not as what they expected, not that what they felt I should do or what I thought they wanted. I no longer played it safe. I no longer played it to be liked. I played it to be me, to show up fully capable of being and staying in the space of the room that I had worked to be in. I just want to know, has anyone ever experienced that? Has anyone ever felt like they couldn't speak up because they were afraid of what was going to happen? Because I get it, I understand it, but you don't have to fight. You don't have to do any of that. You just get to use your voice and call out the nonsense. You get to validate yourself. You get to own the moment. The moment that the woman in my workshop did not do was her moment. That's what I learned to do. I learned to step fully into it. She froze. And investigating the pattern, this is where she needed the work. That's where I did the work. She didn't challenge the interruption at all. She missed that opportunity. And I remember missing them, but being able to call it out was a win for me, because I called it out. Engage with power. You know what that means? When you're able to engage with power, that means that you teach people how to treat you. You teach people how you're going to show up. That means you're showing up different. You're giving a different perspective. You're giving different energy. And sometimes it's not going to sit well with people, but that's not your business. I just want to tell you that that's not your business at all. Not one iota. So she said she was confident, and she told the truth in that. So learning to stand in her truth was when she said to me, I am confident. I know it. Yes, you do know. And she was rooted in her story, but she hadn't questioned her silence. And not questioning your silence, not questioning why you're not showing up, keeps you stuck, keeps you from being in the building fully. It keeps you one step in and one step out. And understanding your belief system. And that's another thing that we have to do. Again, we have to understand why we don't speak up, why she stayed quiet. That's the biggest thing that any woman that's feeling like she's not heard, that she's interrupted, that she isn't free to be herself, she needs to ask herself and understand her beliefs of why you stay quiet. Trusting your voice. Trusting what you're saying is enough. Trusting that what you're doing is enough. Trusting that you have said all that needed to be said. Yes, that's part of what shakes the world. When you start trusting your voice, you shake this world up. It is. Because you're giving validation to yourself. You're starting to trust yourself, love yourself enough to believe in you and not worry about the ROI, the return on investment. You're no longer looking for that allyship outside of yourself first. You're looking inside of you first to know what you want, know how to show up, know what to ask for, what to expect. So you become unshakable when you trust your own voice. I'm just saying. You're going to have a standard. You're going to hold the standard. That's what you learn to do. Learn to hold a standard, that expectation. I just want you to know, and it's possible when we do this work and start to understand ourselves. So the real problem isn't just the system. Yes, men interrupt. Yes, workplace culture is broken. Let's not get it twisted. It is. But the deeper truth is we haven't fully tapped into ourselves. We have to learn to tap into ourselves. And we don't. And that belief of not know, the belief that we're too busy, we don't have time to understand is what keeps us from showing up also. We freeze because we have a belief that we've never questioned. And the interruptions trigger the parts in us that were never healed. So that's why it's so important to do the work on yourself and understand your why. Understand why you aren't showing up. We can understand our why of why we're wanting to get ahead, why we want to get to the next level, why we want to ask for the raise, but understanding those beliefs that keep us fighting to get there. Understanding the hurts and the pains are just as important. So, ladies, let me ask you some questions. Okay. Where do you say you're confident but still go silent? Write that down. What belief is still unhealed that lets you give away your mic? You no longer want to talk up. Like, here, go ahead. If you want to talk over me, go ahead, talk over me. All right, he interrupted me. Now I'm mad. I'm going to go and I'm going to look for my own table. I'm not going to sit here. What does that? Why do you do that? And the last question I want you to ask yourself is, do I shrink when I'm challenged? And when you ask yourself that question and you write it down on paper, I want you to tell me. If you don't mind, you can send me an email. You can respond, leave a message in the chat, whatever you need to do, because that's so important to understanding yourself. We never take the time to understand ourselves. We're too busy trying to understand everyone else so we can get to that next level. But when we allow ourselves to understand us, we no longer have to figure them out because we know how to stand differently. We know how to show up differently. Okay? If this episode spoke to you, please take the Brag Bag Confidence Assessment. Find out if you're really rooted or if you're still waiting to be allowed. DM me your takeaways from today's episode and DM me if you just want to tell me how you feel about the quiz that you took. I want to hear it. I really do. I want to know what's going on so that we can get to the understanding of our belief system, our core beliefs. I want to hear what is working for you. Next week, I'm bringing my good friend, Nicole McCain, on. She is going to walk us through how to use language that's direct, powerful, and grounded without being dismissed as emotional. They love to tell us we're emotional in these jobs, ladies. You don't want to miss this one. This is a movement, and it's not just about using your voice. It's about keeping it, trusting it, even when someone else tries to take it away. We don't shrink over here. We speak from our roots because we rooted in it. We rooted and grounded in our confidence and our beliefs. So we are unshakable. I will see you next time. Share, like, and leave a comment because this allows other women to find this podcast who needs it. Sis, you don't have to twist, shrink, or hide. You deserve to be seen, heard, and valued for exactly who you are. If this episode spoke to you, make sure you follow, subscribe, so you never miss the conversation. And if you're ready to take this work deeper, take my confidence quiz. The link is in the show notes. Or book a session with me to start showing up in your career and life with the confidence you deserve. Until next time, walk through the door differently, show up, show out, be you, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Strong and fierce, taking over. No one can deny we're queens in our own right. Swagger on fleek, we're pulling the game, turning heads, yeah. We're making our own name, living free. We're breaking the mold, unapologetic, we're standing bold. Every picture we post, it's a story untold. We're inspiring souls, watch us unfold, watch us unfold. Capture the moment, hold it tight. Every click, every flash, we're shining so bright. Through the lens, we're showing who we truly